All right, today we are going to be talking about what our transition to a trauma-informed school might look like in a quick overview. So for our blueprint, we're going to be looking at what the difference is between a traditional and a trauma-informed school, why we should make the shift, what a multi-tiered system of support overview is. We'll talk about the leadership team, what they need to work on, a mentorship idea, parent involvement, and then wrapping it up. So when we talk about a trauma-informed school, there are some clear distinctions between a traditional school and a trauma-informed school. And one of the main differences is the focus on academics for a traditional school versus the whole child approach, looking at all of the pieces that might be impacting a student, including academics, family, background, stress in the brain. Trauma-informed school focuses a lot on how trauma impacts the brain. And then another distinction is that the traditional school a lot of times looks at behavior as choices, and that's it. The trauma-informed school will look at how the neurobiology behind behaviors comes out when students have experienced trauma and what that might look like in the classroom. So why make the shift? 3 reasons: the prevalence of trauma, the brain and what it affects, and how resiliency is important. So with the prevalence, Taurasi and de Galeras in 2017 report that out of almost 54,000 adults, 59% of them reported having at least one adverse childhood experience, which includes 14% who experienced 4 or more. In addition to that, Pickens and Shop in 2017 shared that an estimated 25% of youths in the general population have experienced a traumatic event. So 1 out of 4 students in the classroom have probably experienced a traumatic event in their childhood. With that, we know that trauma affects the brain in lots of ways. Threats and stressors can impact the limbic system, which keeps the stress response at a high level, and it makes students be in this perpetual state of survival mode. And when they're in survival mode, they're not able to think right, to play right, to connect with others through empathy. There's all these pieces that get in the way in the classroom, with academics, with peer relationships. And then if students have experienced periods of toxic stress, the neural connections can be disrupted by this as well. And then the importance of resiliency is it's not the end of the story, the stress that a student has experienced. Positive relationships with adults can make a huge difference, including mentoring. So that's some of the reasons for why we want to move to a trauma-informed school. And then with that, MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. Here's a quick overview. It's like it's a way of putting all of what we're doing in a school kind of through this tiered system. So a couple of pieces of that include universal screenings. So all students are screened for academic and social emotional needs at the beginning of the year. And then moving into evidence-based strategies, spending time and energy doing things that have proven to work, and then providing targeted support. So it's providing support to students who need it based on the data. And then moving in order to make this shift, we are going to have to put together a leadership team. And there's a couple of key pieces that this leadership team is going to need to work on. The first is to create a mission statement. Next, to work through a trauma-sensitive schools checklist. This will look through what our school is already doing, a little rating form, and what it'll help illuminate what areas we need to improve more on. Other ideas that the leadership team might put together is leading a book study for the staff and putting together professional development planning as we move forward. Now, when we think of tiered interventions, Tier 1 are things that we do for all students, and then Tier 2 are some targeted supports for small groups of students, and then Tier 3 are individual targeted supports for students needing that. And one of the Tier 3 interventions is mentorship program. And while we're working through these changes, we do want to start with Tier 1 interventions or Tier 1 whole school supports and figure out what that looks like for us. But at the same time, mentorship can be one of the biggest things that impact a student in a positive way. And so I do want to focus on beginning a mentoring program with adults from the community to meet with a student once per week to provide another positive adult relationship. While we're making this shift, it is important to keep parental involvement a priority. Parents know their students best, and while some of the trauma may have stemmed from relationships with parents, at the same time we do need to keep them prioritize when we're working on this. So a couple of ways to do that is to share the focus by sending parents information of our focus and learning what the staff is going to be doing. We can work on providing an orientation where we give parents the opportunity to come hear a presentation on the new focus, how it works, and what we're learning, and then to monthly do a share out with parents of updates and what we're working on. All right, for these changes, it can be exciting to move forward. It can also be a little bit not exciting to move forward at the same time. And so with the timeline, we do want to take things slow and steady. So this is our overview to staff this fall. And then my action item from here is to ask for volunteers who might want to join the trauma-informed leadership team that does a lot of planning for fall of 2021. And then the only thing this year that we want to look at is some tier 1 whole school approaches and work on providing some continued professional development. So this will be a focus that we'll be bringing in, but not much is going to change until next fall. That's when we will begin implementation of tier 2 and 3 supports.